Hi, welcome to Wyncode's UX UI Year in Review. Wanted to just share a presentation that I'm about to pull up here, but we wanted to share our last year, our first year doing UX UI at Wyncode, and talk about some of the results and see what's happened since then. What were our goals to begin with anyways? And so that's what we're gonna walk through. My name is Jessica Tortolano. I'm the head instructor for the UX UI Immersive program at Wyncode. So hold on here. I'm just going to pull up the presentation here. And let me see. It's going. All right. And also, just so you know, we will share the presentation with you on our website. So if you're interested in recapping or sharing with anybody that you know, we would be happy for you to do that. So, all right, cool. I'm going to, all right, so we're back with the presentation. Just a reminder again, my name's Jessica Tortolano. I'm the head instructor for UX UI Immersive at Wyncode Academy, and we're located here in beautiful Miami, Florida. So great. So a fun thing here, we're recapping last year. Last year was our first full year of doing UX UI cohorts. So we're going to give you a little bit of what were our goals, and we practice what we preach. We are measure-based, KPI-based, results-based. And so one of the things that you'll see are, based on our goals, what did happen? Are we still on track for what our goals were? Now, in between that, I have these little moments of fun where you see the POW moment in the corner. So anytime you see the POW moment, I'm kind of disrupting the presentation, the year in review, to share a little bit of information on what things I kind of hit home on, what things I focus on throughout the cohort. So there's just a couple little tips in there for people maybe that aren't as familiar with UX UI or what best practices you should be following. So let's jump into it. So we have year in review plus a little Batman POW tips in between. And great. So what were our goals? Why did we even start with UX UI here at Wyncode? By the way, Wyncode Academy started out about 5 years ago with a web development program, a non-traditional accelerator program. And last year, in 2018, Wyncode launched its user experience, user interface program, also known as around the nation right now as product design. So I always admit we have a little bit of an identity crisis with what we're called. But my advice would be look at the job description and pay attention to the bullets and what they want you to do. So with that said, when I came back from San Francisco, I lived in Miami for about 15 years and my husband was transferred to San Fran. We decided after 3 years to return back to Miami. And so I had really, really ambitious goals. I had a vision for Miami and South Florida when it came to UX UI. And some of those goals, short term, was all about making sure during the cohort that students come away with a strong foundational understanding of user-centered design. And then I put in there and aesthetic because a lot of times what's missing from nice, clean, delightful interactions or experiences is just a little bit of involvement of the user and a good layout or good type or good font selections, nice, chunky, clickable form fields, things like that. So that's where the aesthetic comes in. Now, in terms of that long-term goal, the goal was, and this is where I get a little ambitious, create a reputation for Miami, cultivate a community of UX designers that can't be ignored. And so that's pretty ambitious, right? people will say, well, you're not, you know, Silicon Valley in Miami. But we have an amazing design community here. So I thought to myself, you know, when I was coming back to South Florida, why can't South Florida be known as a place where you can get amazing product design that you can't ignore? In fact, travel and tourism is a great opportunity, as this is one of our, I guess our first or second most popular industry. I think the second is actually agriculture. So, so that was a pretty ambitious goal. And so now looking back, and I wrote this slide before we even started the cohort. And looking back at it, I'm going to say feel like we're on track here. So I'm going to give you a little bit of the results. Why do I think we're on track? What have we accomplished here? Well, we have, and this is just 2018, we have successfully completed 4 cohorts, 4 UX UI cohorts. Each one of those was 8 weeks. They range in size, they range in student background. They also range in, hold on here, I'm just, let's see here, just making that, okay, go back. And so, and then they range in what projects we work on. And so every cohort, each student needs to come out of the cohort with 3 projects for their portfolio. And that's something that I honed in on as a person that built UX teams in the past. So I, as a hiring manager, need to see that the employee or potential employee has at least 3 projects. So as you can see, cohort 2 was pretty big. It was a great group. All of the classes have been amazing. They all take on their own personality, their own everyone brings something to the table. So it was an amazing year, 4 full cohorts, 8 weeks. And sorry, jumping ahead here. Okay, just making sure we're on the right. Here's a little bit of a sneak peek or a behind the scenes or a look behind the curtain, if you will. C1, right? C1, we actually had a great first group. Actually, Calvin Sims is one of our, it was actually our first UX hire here at Wyncode under the Win Talent. Okay. Hold on here. Let's see, something happened here. Is this it? No. Okay. Where did we go? Sorry. Oh my goodness. Whoa. There it is. Okay. So Calvin was one of the first hires here at the Win Talent arm, which is the consulting arm of Wyncode, and he was the first UX consultant hired out of the program from C1. During C2, as you saw, that group was very large, and you see us here in that conference room or our classroom where we had tons of wall space. We love to externalize all our work. So in your project teams, just like I like to do in class, is be able to come over to the team or the group and identify what things have been done, what were the findings, and what are the big takeaways. And by externalizing, you get a good feel for that. And then C2 was actually the group that we started working on a real life project for the city of Miami. So we, you know, again, with iteration and learning, just like we do with our digital products, we ran a very successful first cohort. Then we started saying, okay, let's experiment now that we know the content is right. Let's start experimenting with real world projects. So this second cohort, the big one, we did user testing on a new website, and you actually can see it hanging up over here for the city of Miami, and it was in beta. So we did our first project brief was a research project. So that was super exciting, and I'll share a lot of fun slides on that later. Now, C3, what was, I guess, standout on that cohort is we went to my former, the company I used to work for here in South Florida. It's called Sapient Razorfish. They belong to Publicis. I believe that's the largest advertiser in the world. So they're an advertising agency in France. I think it's the one that's been around the longest, and it is one of the, if not the largest one globally. And so you see here two of the students presenting one of their briefs and receiving extremely valuable feedback from the team, the UX and design community team at Sapient. And what was so endearing to us and so impressive was how much they cared about giving us feedback. I mean, they really, really got into the project. So, and that was also a city project, real world. And C4, something as we kept kind of pushing our experiment bar, the next thing we wanted to do was start to collaborate with our web development team. So you see here the UX students collaborating with the development and web developers that were in their cohort here at Wyncode at the same time. And they got lots of great feedback, lots of great questions, and it was the start to what now is officially starting this year. We are doing projects with web development. So we overlap slightly in our cohorts in order to facilitate this. So stay tuned for next year's year in review, but all of that was made possible by those first 4 cohorts, and really understanding, you know, what the value is, what the benefits are, and how we can experiment around that. Okay. Okay, POW. Here's a UX POW moment. Okay, so just to break out of our year in review, one of the things that I spend a lot of time on, and I probably sound like a broken record at the end of the cohort, is forms best practices. There is such a thing. There is a 100-page white paper by Luke W. His last name is Robalewski, and he just goes by Luke W. He's one of the original gurus of UX. In 2008, he wrote the white paper all about forms, online forms, and a lot of heat mapping, a lot of data behind it, a lot of experimenting. So after that white paper came out, we stopped having to ask ourselves questions like, should the field label be on the left of the field, left aligned, or right aligned? Or should it be on the top? Or should it be inside, right? There's so many questions that you can ask yourself. So here is just a very high level best practice. Field on top, left align everything. And the reason why is, according to Luke W.'s white paper, this creates more scannable content. And it can make or break your conversion. So if your conversion relies on capturing data or user input, you should definitely want to facilitate a speedy process. And by doing that, you scan down and you have your strong call to action. The other thing that you want to do, and this is just a general best practice here, is you have primary calls to action and you have secondary calls to action. So my primary action should be action oriented. So what am I doing? Maybe submit is too general. So is it create account, or buy something, or place order? So you want to take the guessing out by being very descriptive with your call to action. And the other thing is the secondary action of, maybe, let's say this is create account, I can do it later. And that allows us to give the user control. Don't force your users to do anything. The other thing back here, back to forms best practices, left align, very scannable. This can work across devices. So what's great about this format is it works well for mobile. Also, mobile has trained users to scroll. So fitting your forms above the fold isn't, it really isn't a mandate anymore. Some companies would mandate everything needs to fit above the fold if it's a form. Now, times change, things evolve, new devices come on the scene that retrain us. For example, mobile has trained us to do this left align scan. So check out Luke W. Follow him on Twitter or LinkedIn. He posts all sorts of really cool A/B testing results. Obviously, he's the forms guy. And he used to have a website, I don't know if he still does, called Boxes and Arrows, because that's what UX designers used to do. We create boxes and arrows. So moving down into our recap here of last year, 34 individuals altogether graduated from the UX UI Immersive. Actually, so that's just 1 year. And so those are 34 lives that we feel that we've impacted. And we believe that we're creating, we're setting the vision that I had from the beginning in place. So one product designer at a time. We have 34 UX evangelists out there now in the world. So that's super exciting. And just to give you an example, Wyncode has graduated over 650 students, and that's over the course of 5 years with their original program, web development. Now, if we break that down a little bit more, so we have 34 people that went through all 4 of the cohorts. We're actually currently in cohort 5. That was the start of this year. But last year, if we took all our results, how it breaks down here is 18 of those students have been placed. 2 were here for self-enrichment. 8 are still on the market. So some of those graduates that just came out of the December class are still potentially on the market, and maybe some that started working in other places and are back on the market now. And then we have 6 entrepreneurs that took the cohort for their own business. And I have a great example of that, of someone actually who's in the current one. And overall, we have an amazing statistic here. 90% job placement at Wyncode. And Wyncode is really transparent about sharing all of that data. It's on our website if you'd like to check that out. Okay, which companies are those placements happening at? So here's a little, a quick scan of some logos of companies that have hired UX UI graduates. This is strictly UX UI. Not to say that web developers haven't been hired at these companies, but I'm focusing on UX UI. So American Express, Norwegian Cruise Lines here in Miami. Actually, the American Express example is great because that's someone who came from New York, took the accelerator program here, got to hang out in Miami for 2 months in the winter, and then when she went back, she was the first out of 13 students to get hired, probably a week after graduation at American Express. And she's still there, and she loves that role. We have PwC, we have Venture Labs, we have Microsoft, the social client, the City of Miami, Cognizant or Soft Vision, they're an agency. The student that got hired there was working on the Macy's account, Macy's the department store. So there's a lot of agencies out there that will put you on projects for really cool companies like that. Office Depot, also here in South Florida. We have Venture Hive, we have Lab Miami, IntelliPeer, ADP, which is the paycheck company, and then Epicenter, one of our former students, great story about her, landed a role at Epicenter. Epicenter, if anyone who is listening to the broadcast right now, they created Envision. Envision is the product that we use to prototype our screen flows. So that's extremely exciting. And then CareCloud, also one of our biggest hiring partners here. PwC, also a great company. here in South Florida, and a global company as well. Okay, so that is those are the companies that's sort of the breakdown of where the students have gone after the 4 cohorts last year. But in order to make this this vision that I have, that I shared with you early on, it's going to take a village. They always say it takes a village to raise a child. Well, it takes a village or a big town or a city like Miami to make sure that we're giving opportunity to these UX designers coming out of the cohort. So let's take a look at that. Our first UX project for Calvin, who graduated C1, he worked on this first project. It was our first UX project here at Win Talent. It was called Homes Direct. And it was a great first project for us to tackle because it had a lot of learning experiences. Homes Direct, the founder, his vision is it's sort of like the Instagram of real estate, really disrupting the real estate market. And I'll let you take a look at that if you're interested, and you could download the app and check that out. But Calvin was amazing at working on this project, a great first example of a consulting project here at Win Talent. Okay, the other cool thing is that the city of Miami has been involved in almost every single cohort. So the city and Miami-Dade County. And we've been so lucky to have them on our side and to be open. And actually, it's very endearing to know that a company or an organization like the City of Miami is open and embracing this idea of user experience. So what we did is we tested the beta site, which you're looking at here. It's actually now live, and we did user testing. We did lots of research, and that was very enlightening. And that was something that we started with the second cohort. So here we have another moment of pow, Batman UX tip. The feedback loop. Okay, this is also something that I really, really stress in the cohorts is you must iterate on your designs. You don't want to come up with your solution and then get tied to it and just keep moving forward without getting that feedback. And so I'm sharing another source here, Design Thinking by IBM. You could Google it. They're very open with that presentation and that methodology, but it's a methodology that I pull pieces from. I don't follow it exactly, and I won't get into like the pros and cons of design thinking. But what I think is the key here, and the one that everyone latches onto, is you must involve the user. So let's say, and they always use this example in design thinking videos, let's say you're creating an app to land a plane. You better talk to a pilot, right? So you definitely want to make sure that you're using the actual people that will be utilizing the product, get feedback from them, and iterate. And so iteration, constant feedback loops are super important. One thing that you'll see in our presentations here in the UX UI cohort at Portfolio Night is that most of the projects go through anywhere from 5 to 25 rounds of iterations, and that's a 3-week sprint. So that gives you an example of something that I definitely am very, very cautious about in making sure that the students are doing this properly. So in that, you're observing, you're reflecting, and you're making, and you're looping through those phases. So how is someone using it? What are we going to do about it? And then what are we going to change or create to achieve those things? All right, back to the City of Miami. So remember the project for C2. We presented all of our findings to this amazing VIP room of people. And actually, I'm going to draw a little circle around them. Giovanni Castro is the right hand to the mayor, to Mayor Suarez at the city of Miami. So he came super supportive. Also, Mike Sarasti, who's the head of or the director of innovation at the city of Miami. And this was a tough meeting for them. So we brought a lot to light there. And, you know, what's happening is you have this conflict always of you have developers and then you have designers. And what we try to do is speak the same language, come together. It doesn't always, you know, sometimes the communication can be misinterpreted, and you also have to make sure that you're presenting in a way that you're not just pointing out all the negative. And so this was a great learning lesson for the 13 students in cohort 2. Bo Santiago, he actually is heavily involved with Wyncode still to this day. He's one of our TAs. And he is presenting some of his findings on the testing that we did. And so this is part of an ongoing story. And, you know, I think that the meeting was tough for the city because it made them realize that there were things maybe that needed to be fixed. And although working super hard on all of these programs, it's like, what's that balance? Okay, so we'll come back to how that turned out. In the meantime, what's really cool is then we moved on to the Bloomberg Mayor's Challenge. So this is also something that Mike Sarasti brought to us, and he said, hey, do you have any students that might be interested in working on this challenge? I reached out to the alumni. This is 2 students from cohort 2 that created this amazing prototype demonstrating how you could educate residents in the city of Miami about sea level rise. And you see here on the example of the prototype, this was the very, very first draft idea. Could we demonstrate what could happen to your home and how would residents react to that? And there was a lot of concern about that because we didn't want to scare people, but we also wanted to give them enough information to do something about. And here is then the evolution of that. So those 2 students, actually back at that last slide, they won a cash prize for their submission, which was amazing. So that was good. Then we kept moving forward. So the city said, okay, to push this idea, created more prototyping, created something that they brought to residents, and you see them testing that here. And we have Bo and we have Calvin and Aileen here in the background who were all students. Okay, because of all this amazing work we've done with the city, they've put themselves in a position where they said, you know what, we should embrace this idea of UX a lot more. And they brought Wyncode and myself on as to do corporate training for 24 city employees. So I go there every Thursday, 7 weeks long for 3 hours, and we learn the practices of user experience. And Tatiana, who's here, is a former student that was hired on as a consultant to make that happen. And here's Mike Sarasti. He's our biggest advocate in the city. He's been amazing to work with and a huge supporter. He's making big changes at the city, but the changes should be right for the city. The other part that, the other piece here, or another entity that's been very supportive, is Tabernacle of Glory. They've put, this is a church organization here in South Florida, but it's 8,000 members strong in multiple cities in Canada, Haiti, and French Guiana. And what's really cool, so we had 2 students here that work in the organization from the last cohort. The pastor of the church has joined this year's cohort because of the commitment to the community, the Haitian American community, and making sure that they're able to carry all of the good practices and methodologies through. And when I say it's a big church, did I say it's a big church? Look at that church. That's amazing. And our student is there leading the charge. So he usually is the one preaching here. And so that's been amazing. And guys, if the city and the church are doing it, you guys should be doing it too, whatever organization you're in. Okay, one more. I know we're running over a little bit, but a couple more. So here's another thing that I talk a lot about in the class: buttons, also known as CTAs, or calls to action. So make sure that when you have buttons, they're not competing with each other. And so this is one set right here. So you'd have your primary call to action. I showed this in the forms. Here's another example. I have my primary. What do you want me to do on this screen? There really should be just one primary action. Now, you're going to have supporting actions or secondary roles, and that could be something that appears more like this. So don't compete for my attention, but it's there if you need it. And then this example here that we created in Principal to show a cool animation of, if I click on a CTA that says start and then I click and I submit, what's my visual cue or my visual feedback? How does it move? What's the motion, animation, or transition? And animations and transitions can be great. Don't overdo it. They should have a purpose. All right. The other part of the It Takes a Village is when we had our first portfolio night in C4, we invited 8 of directors of product design or user experience, or just really important people in the community to come give feedback to our students on their portfolios. So here, John Stewart, who's an amazing member of the community, works at FIU, very well accomplished, great feedback from him. Also, we had a Magic Leap here. Well, actually, let me not skip ahead. So Whereby Us is one of the companies that help support. And this is just sort of the laundry list here of all the amazing community members that have continued to help build our skills for the students. Kairos, facial recognition, amazing. Magic Leap, like I said. Clutch Prep, Care Cloud, FIU, as I said, John Stewart there, in 8 days. And just to recap, so that all sounds great. It seems like we do a lot here in terms of projects, community involvement, but what are the actual student stories? Let's take a look. We have success stories. We have, our students have gone on to do great things, actually. And they continue to learn and build on their portfolios. And remember, Wyncode is sort of just the first step, the first stone in that journey, in that career. And so they're still learning as they go. Tatiana Plaxo that I mentioned, she's with me every Thursday at the City of Miami. She's there full time to help them understand what we learn every Thursday. And she was actually placed there by Microsoft. So a great partnership between Microsoft and the City of Miami has given one of our students from C4 an opportunity to continue to learn and put her skills out there in the real world. Rochelle Batesh, also a great story, UX UI designer at Epicenter, has also been getting lots of great real world experience. And her story is very interesting. I feel like that shows real hustle in how she landed that role. And I'm gonna leave that as like a little bit of a cliffhanger. That might be its own little webinar one day. So, but super successful stories here. Congratulations to Rochelle and Tatiana. And then as I talked about, Calvin Sims was the first UX hire at WinTalent. Out of the first cohort, the Miami Herald did a story on him. He was on the front cover of the business section there in the Miami Herald. So big story there, and has continued to move on to work on all sorts of great projects. In conclusion, so just to recap, so again, we always want to be results oriented, just like we are with digital products. So what are people saying? On Course Report, which is the, here's the homepage, find the best bootcamp for you. We have an opportunity to scan through all of our reviews. I'm just scrolling through here. These are all UX UI reviews from last year. And you see that we have a pretty consistent 5-star rating on overall experience, instruction, curriculum, and job assistance. So that's super exciting. And then let's not forget the little things. So last year we had approximately 11 events. We used 1,500 Post-it notes. I know, I did some crazy math there to determine. We do a lot of scrappy work here. We use a lot of Post-it notes, but we recycle. We also use 200 Sharpies. So our best friend, our best tool is Post-it notes and Sharpie, or just paper and pen. 2,500 hours of creating digital products, designing digital products. Maybe 500 plus cups of coffee if it's 2 a day, with a 200 something day work year. And then 800 respondents. What is that? So that is our top number of, in each project, we do surveys. The students will release surveys in the research phase. The last, the biggest impact survey reached 800 people. I don't think I've ever worked on a real project out there in the real world that got that much feedback. So that's amazing and something to not sort of glance over. So lots of support out there in the community. So, well, guys, thanks so much for tuning in for some of those little tips and a recap of last year. The next cohort starts in March. For any questions, please reach out to admissions@wyncode.co if you are interested in learning more about the program. Thanks so much. Happy Tuesday, everyone. And just to get specific, March 25th. So I know March is right around the corner, but the cohort 6 starts March 25th. So let us know if you're interested or if you have any questions. Thanks so much.